Welcome to the Sports on Tap NEO High School Football Show. Be sure to join the conversation by liking us on Facebook and following us on Twitter at SOT Podcast. Use the hashtag SOTHSF. Here are your hosts, Rob Trump, Josh Jeffy, Ed Dick, and Sean Duffy.
And welcome back to Sports on Tap. It's our Week 8 high school football recaps. I'm Rob Trump. We have Josh Jeffy, Ed Dick, Sean Duffy live from Studio J.
Word.
Guys, welcome back.
Awesome. Good to be back.
Yeah, you guys had a heck of a game you covered this last week.
Well, it finally feels like middle October out in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah, it
50
finally
degrees.
feels chilly, but, covering the games, we've been pretty lucky this year with weather so far. As I say that, as I knock on something that resembles wood, because we still have at least 2 more weeks left into the season. But, our game of the week was really good. We'll talk about that later on in the show. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, you guys had a chance to see Olmsted Falls travel to Midview, which was a great game to see. And really, you've been lucky all year covering some really close, fun games.
Yeah.
A lot of scoring in most of them. Some actually weren't, though. We've seen some defensive efforts this year, but can't believe it's Week 8 already. Or Week 8's over now.
Yeah,
and
right.
The season's starting to wind down where teams are going to need some big wins if they want to get in the playoffs. Some teams fighting for that playoff spot.
Playoff implications on the line for, I think, the next 2 weeks. I mean, just
On
get
mute
it,
would help.
get it on,
Nice.
get it on.
And, maybe this week we can finally get really talk playoffs with Ed. His number crunching. He's been teasing it now
Been in his lab.
for the last 3 weeks, and the
He's
numbers,
got,
man.
He's got beakers and stuff going on in his lab, figuring stuff out.
Do you know what's funny? I mean, he comes in tonight. I mean, he has the biggest smile on his face when you talk about crunching numbers in playoffs. He just absolutely loves it, and he'll be crunching numbers all tonight, talking playoffs. Or he probably already crunched these numbers, didn't he?
They're well
I
crunched.
crunch my numbers.
Yeah.
Crunch my numbers. I can certainly. I think I'm fluent enough in your guys' conferences to provide some insight as well, though.
All right.
Absolutely. Well, we've had a lot of great games coming up. We'll first talk to Josh Jeffy, who covers the Greater Cleveland Conference. Josh, talk about Week 8 in the GCC.
Well, you mentioned that we've had a lot of good offensive performances, and the offenses for every GCC team was in full effect this week with some very, very high scores. So this is the kind of week that the defensive coordinators kind of want to push to the side and quickly move on. But we're going to first start with the battle of the S team. Strongsville took on Shaker Heights, and Strongsville came away with a 39-35 victory over the Red Raiders. Strongsville improves to 4-4 on the season, 2-3 in the conference, and Shaker Heights drops to 3-5, a disappointing 0-5 in the GCC this year. I thought they'd be doing a lot better. They were my team to watch, but they just have not had enough to put it together to get a conference win here this year. Shaker actually did well enough to be in the red zone with 3 seconds left in this game, but they could not convert, and Strongsville came away with a victory. Jameer Demukes again for the Red Raiders with an outstanding game, passing 27 of 41 for 441 yards and 4 touchdowns. And you got to give credit to his receiver, McCaw Hills, 15 receptions, 316 yards and a touchdown. Thomas Springer, Will Greer, and Mike Scott also had TD receptions for the Red Raiders, but it was not enough. And they were up in the third quarter, 27-21. But then they had a kickoff return for a touchdown. Strongsville did, that is. And then Johnny Major had a TD run that really just sealed the deal for the Mustangs. That actually put them on top. And they came away with a big victory. This is the one where they needed it. When you're at this point, you're around the 500 mark in the season. That's when you want to finish. That's where you want to finish, 5-5. So they're on their way. Strongsville has a very winnable game. they will host Elyria, and Shaker Heights, it does not get much easier for them. They will host Solon, and that's this Saturday, October 21st. The offensive battle of the week, and Ed was firsthand for this game. Euclid defeats Brunswick 78-54. Yes, this is not a basketball game. This is a football game. But Euclid improves to 7-1. They are 5-0 in the conference. Brunswick drops to 4-4. They are 2-3 in the conference. Now, I got to give credit to Brunswick. They did not quit in this game. They were down 33-7 early in this game. Then after halftime, they scored 28 points in the third quarter alone. The game got as close as 61-48 in that third quarter, and then they just did not have enough defensively to withstand Euclid. But they were led once again by Ethan Flanagan, 161 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns. Quarterback Cole Samiska had 403 total yards, 4 touchdowns. Yeah, and those his total yards included runs of 80 and 87 yards. But this one, you have to give credit to the Euclid offense. They had 805 total offensive yards. Brunswick, though, had 580 in this game. But Euclid was led by Ronald Lee. 361 rushing yards, 6 total touchdowns in this game. So he put a dynamite effort in. And you know, when it comes to Brunswick games, we do go to our very own Ed Dick, who is in on the sidelines. He is one of the on the Brunswick coaching staff. So, Ed, a little bit about this game. You know, looking back on the Gazette, Pinzoni said, you know, he was not happy with the guys and their tackling, and that was it seemed to be a big key. With 805 total yards of offense, not a lot of tackling was happening.
No, not at all. I mean, there are several of those big plays that Lee hit. I mean, take nothing away from him. He's a great running back. There's multiple plays, though, where he just ran through arm tackles, and there was just a severe lack of wanting to engage in proper tackling techniques. You know, I'm not there at practice every day, but I know this coaching staff. I played for them. I've been a part of the staff before. You know, it's not something they take lightly, and you know, unfortunately, you know, we did have an injury to one of our linebackers, one of our best players on the team, and you know that certainly hurt. But even before he went out, we still had trouble making just tackles. I mean, it's not like, you know, we would meet them in the gap and they'd either run through us or run around, what have you. So that was a big point of contention. You know, just the early returns at the end of the game. It's just the severe lack of tackling, and we saw the same thing Saturday morning for the JV game, which we lost 26-13. You know, at least we held them under 78, so that was a positive. You know, as far as the team's concerned, it was you know, the offense never quit. We actually got it to a 10-point lead. We got it to within 64-54 in the fourth quarter. So, you know, we just needed 1 or 2 more extra stops, and unfortunately at that point, you know, they'd run roughshod over us, and for all intents and purposes, we'd run roughshod over them. I mean, it's not like we scored these points in garbage time. I mean, the game was still, you know, I don't know if Euclid ever thought they were going to lose, but they could have been feeling so good about themselves when they were up 33-7 and they couldn't trigger the running clock on us, and we got to a 10-point lead, with, you know, still in the fourth quarter with plenty of time left. You know, so, you know, obviously a great effort on the offensive part. You know, you put up 54 points, you usually think you're going to win that game. You know, coaches were very disappointed with the defensive effort. We gave up more points in one game than my senior year did the entire season. We gave up 77 points in 11 games in 2001, and we gave up 78 this game. And, you know, I get that, you know, maybe we play maybe 1 or 2 teams the quality of Euclid, but I can't imagine that would have happened on, you know, really on any other team. I mean, it's the worst defensive performance in school history. And
it was actually on historical level, the defensive performance. According to the Gazette, this was the most points given up by a Medina County team since 1923.
Whoa!
Wow, that record will never be broken. By the way,
right?
Yeah, that was an over 100 score, and you know, I don't know, man. When you get to see, we punted 7 times, and we still scored 54 points.
That's crazy.
Like, there are just a lot of one-play drives.
Yeah, it's exactly. And I think that goes back to what we talked about with Coach Benzoni last week was, this Euclid team is fast and faster, and
they're
they
athletic.
have the ability, like Ed said, to have those one-play drives where it's if they can get behind you in coverage, if they can get to the next level and get some, out in the open field, they have the speed on that team to really kick it into the next gear and score the points. I think that's what we saw. It wasn't sustained drives. It wasn't clock control. It was blinking, you missed it plays, or next thing you know, they're in the end zone. You can't figure out what happened. So I think that may be the issue, and it's definitely jarring for a defensive coach to have to go through that many plays. But, I mean, there's probably one or two. If you make one or two tackles on those plays, it's a different game altogether. But unfortunately, as Coach Benzoni pointed out in the Gazette article, in the interview, the tackling performances weren't there, and that happens some nights, and it happened.
Yeah, indeed. So I mean, we'll regroup obviously, and I think the other two teams that we're playing on our schedule will say the same thing about us. But we have two very winnable games coming up. We have both our rivals. Medina and Strongsville still on the board right now, and hopefully, I think I have no doubt that we'll be ready to go for both of those games, and I'm looking forward to hopefully taking down the Green guys within the next couple of weeks. Josh, I wanted to go back to the Shaker Heights Strongsville game real quick.
Sure.
So just looking back at Shaker Heights, I know you mentioned that this was a team you thought could make some strides this year.
Strides, yeah.
And I don't know if this really counts for anything, but if you look at their losses, I mean, a 4-point loss to Strongsville, a 3-point loss to Elyria, a 2-point loss to us. They played Mentor pretty tough. Medina got some guys back. They were able to kind of put it on them. But is this progress for them because they're I mean, record wise, they still haven't won a conference game, but they're in these games,
right?
So what are your thoughts on the teams this year? And
well, I thought last year was the progress year for them, because the year before, 2015, they did not win any conference games as well. But I thought last year they would do a little bit better. They did finally last year have some conference wins. They actually had 3 last year: Strongsville, Elyria, and Brunswick. So now, they're playing close, but you want to see a step up, maybe have 3 wins, maybe even get 4. But, they are playing tough. I mean, they're not getting blown out. They do have offensive weapons here. But, in those close games, if you want to make that next step up, especially in a conference like this, you need to win those games. And they just haven't been able to put it together yet. So we'll see where it happens. Looking at their remaining schedule, if you bear with.
It doesn't get easier for them. They got Solon, they got Euclid.
Yeah, so it doesn't get it. So that's where an opportunity. But you never know. I mean,
according to Joe Itel, they're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, which is probably no big surprise to them. But I think they could maybe catch a team snoozing. Hopefully, Shaker Heights isn't.
No, Cleveland Heights is.
Oh, my bad. One of the Heights teams.
Yeah, it's Cleveland Heights and John Marshall.
They're not in a good way by any stretch of the imagination, but they are.
But
they're not
technically.
You never know.
Technically,
you never know what a victory can do, especially against a team like.
That's true.
Well, we've seen teams like Elyria beat Mentor in order to propel themselves into the playoffs in the past. And
it can be done. I mean, the odds are stacked against them, but you just never know. But going back to your question, Ed, I would have liked to seen a little bit more from them, because I thought they had the offensive firepower to get some victories, and it just, for whatever reason, hasn't really worked out for them this year. But I still think they have a good foundation to build upon, and if they're able to get a little bit of success in this conference, it's going to go a long way for sure. Moving on. As Ed mentioned, I should say the next week for these two teams that we were talking about, Euclid with a big matchup against Mentor. That right there is going to decide the conference championship, and then Brunswick will travel to Medina. Speaking of Medina, they walked away last week with a 41-14 victory over Elyria. Medina improves to 3-5. Overall, 2-3 in the conference. Elyria drops to 1-7. They are 1-4 in the GCC. Now, Elyria got off quickly. They struck first. It was a Dante Beckett to Devian Williams for 65 yards on the second play from scrimmage, but they could not muster much into that one. Give credit to Dylan Foltz, the wide receiver slash running back turned into fourth-string quarterback. He actually started this game. Had to overcome 3 interceptions, but he totaled 310 yards and 5 touchdowns in this game. Dylan O'Dear from Medina scored the other touchdown for them. Medina, well, behind Dylan Foltz, had a total of 500 yards total offense. Elyria only had 285. So this was a big win for Medina as they, just like you said, Ed, Brunswick thinks they have 2 winnable games. I'm sure Medina thinks they have a very winnable game against Brunswick coming up this Friday. And they, will host Medina. Elyria will travel to Strongsville. Finally, the big matchup of the conference this week. Menor came away with a 38-34 victory over Solon. Menor improves to 7-1, 5-0 in the conference. Solon drops to 5-3, 3-2 in the conference. Now, Menor had to go 61 yards in the final drive, capped by a 9-yard touchdown to Logan Shea from Tadas Tatarunas, the quarterback that I seem to mention every week. He also had to overcome interception problems. He actually had 4 of them in this game, but he added 2 touchdowns, 377 yards passing. 546 total yards of offense for Menor. That seems to be the average for them. They're one of the most high-powered offensive teams in Northeast Ohio. But you got to also give credit to Solon, wide receiver Trayvon Raphael, 4 touchdowns, but he had 2 receiving touchdowns, 1 kickoff return for a touchdown, and 1 rushing touchdown. So a dynamite all-around effort for this one. And if you mention Solon, you got to mention Thomas Wilkes. He had a TD run that actually put Solon up 21-20 to start the second half. But again, Menor just too strong on the offensive end. Solon could not get a stop at the end on the final drive, and Menor comes away with the victory. So we're talking Solon will travel to Shaker Heights on Saturday, and when I just mentioned possible conference championship matchup in Week 9, Menor will travel to Euclid. Now, speaking of Joe Eitel, the rankings as of today currently in Division I, Region 1, Menor is number 3, Euclid number 5, so those 2 teams would be in if the playoffs would start today. Solon is on the outside looking in at number 9, Strongsville 11, Shaker at 15. Now in Division I, Region 2, unfortunately, no GCC teams are in the playoff race as of right now. Brunswick sits at number 11, Medina 17, and Elyria 18. So, guys, that's Week 8 in the GCC, a really high-powered, offensively driven week for the GCC. So, but really, I mean, when you're talking Week 9, you're looking at Menor Euclid. That's going to be the huge game everyone's going to be watching, and I will be too, of course.
Well, how big can that Strongsville-Brunswick game be if they both win this week? They're still on the outside looking in, but maybe if both teams win out or one of the teams wins out, they still have a possible opportunity. They're going to need some things to happen to squeeze into the playoffs. But that game could be a pretty good one. Both actually at number 11, one in Division I, Region 1, one in Region 2. But that either way is going to be a great game.
Well, I tell you who's these next 2 weeks are very important to that they need to get victories is Solon.
Yeah.
They are right on the cusp here, but unfortunately they're playing teams that will not get them that many points with Shaker Heights and Medina. So
they gotta hope that Perry, who's one space above them, loses to Kent McKinley this week. While they win out, I think that's what Solon's hoping for. They have. Because Maslin Perry has to go and play Canton McKinley, who's 8-0 on the season.
Mm-hmm.
And should they lose that, I think you would see Solon probably jump
if
them
they
in
win.
the,
if they win.
If they can, if Solon, assuming Solon takes care of business, and looking at the schedule for Solon, Shaker Heights and Medina, while not easy outs in the conference game, should not prove too much of a problem if Solon plays the way they've been playing over the past few weeks. But, obviously they're going to have to do some scoreboard watching this week and definitely next week to see where they fall, because right now the team one spot ahead of them is Perry, who has a very tough matchup against Canton McKinley. So that has implications down the way for both those teams. So that should definitely be of interest to the Solon faithful.
It's going to be tough for Solon to get in. They're almost 2 full points out right now, and even if they win out,
Here we go, numbers. Yes,
Oh,
numbers.
numbers and such. Yeah, I mean, even if I'm going to go on a limb and say Perry's probably going to win their last game of the season. So even if they lose against McKinley, they'll most likely beat Glen Oak at 2-6. The max, if Perry were to lose, their maximum is 21.6 points. So if they win, at least beat Glen Oak, they'll fall within the range of the min average win out according to Joe Itel, which is 22.7 and 21.6. Solon has to win out, and everything has to go right for them to end up with 23 points total. And that's assuming that a lot of teams that they've already beaten already win, and some of those teams are going to beat each other. So they're going to end up. They are right now. They are at the mercy of other teams.
Right.
You look back. You look at their schedule. I mean, a very tough loss to Stowe. Tough losses to Euclid and Mentor. I mean, they were in every game.
Yep.
And which a team like Solon, you come to expect that from them.
Right.
But you also expect them to win some of these higher. They've established such a good track record over the years. I mean, this is just a very, very competitive Division I, Region 1, where a 7-3 record might not get you in, because if you look at some of the heavy hitters in the region, you got 7-1 and 8-0 all over the place, and a 6-2 in Massillon Jackson. But they've gotten enough points from their wins to give themselves a little bit of cushion, and they got 2 matchups against Green and Hoover. Green's 3-5, Hoover's 4-4. Massillon Jackson's looking pretty good right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for some of the I mean, you got to win out at this point. If you're on the outside looking in, you need to win out and hope that the guys above you just lose. You even say the guys beneath you too. I mean, some of those averages. Yeah.
If the team beneath you might
have more
might have
points.
potentially have more points ahead of them than what you have. So, a team like Austintown's another one that Solon might need to watch out for.
Yeah, that's true. They're right there.
They started out 0-2, losses to Hudson and Brunswick. They won 5 of 6, and their only other losses to a very, very good Massillon team.
Yeah, they're 5-3 right now, and their max points right now are 23.4 if they would win out. So they're right there. They need a little help too, but they're definitely not out of the picture yet, though.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to Division 2 with, Division 1, Region 2 with Brunswick, we're sitting at a full 5 points underneath Dublin Jerome, and a lot would need to happen.
Yeah.
Obviously you need to beat Medina and Strongsville. You want to do that anyways. That's part of those are some of our stated goals for the season.
Yeah, they need a lot of help.
Yeah, a lot of help. So you look at some of the games that we that we maybe wish we could have back. Highland was a very tough game to begin with. Mentor's Mentor, that happened. Solon was a game. Solon hit big plays on us, and I think that might contribute to Solon's problems against some of the better teams, is that they have a tendency to not sustain drives as well as some of the other teams. They need to hit the big play. More often than not, they can hit the big play and they're okay, but they hit 4 big plays on us, and before we knew it, we were down 28 to 7, and it was tough for us to get back into that game. So right now we've already doubled our win total from Brunswick standpoint. Obviously you want to make the playoffs, but we're making progress. But we're just not to the level where we need to be. When that's where Euclid, Mentor, and Solon are right now as a group. Medina and Elyria, Medina's not technically eliminated yet, but
all signs are pointing to that.
It's not looking too good for them. They're once again another rebuilding year. You lose a guy like Jimmy Daw, who is your all-world running back.
Yeah.
Plus the amount of injuries that they've had all year.
And a new head coach
Exactly,
in the system.
new coaching staff.
I mean, they're on their 4th quarterback.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And they were still able to get a victory from that, so kudos to them.
Yeah, that says a lot. And nice job by Larry Laird to get those players to keep playing and fighting as the season goes along. All right, good stuff, Ed, and great job, Josh, on the GCC.
Thank you,